Every year I rank all the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books, and I'm back doing it again this year, but with a twist. I'll be ranking all the books in a tier list, with the top spot Zooey Mama being the best, the A and B sections being the okay books, and the bottom Cheese Touch being the worst. Each book will be put in the order of how I would rank them. Every book will be included in this ranking, except for these two, this book because it's literally blank, and any other special edition. Let's go. I'm going to be going in the order of when they were released, starting with the original Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Obviously, this book is a classic. Everyone knows that. You got Gray going to middle school with Rowley. He's got to deal with his family. It's an overall a really relatable book, even though Gray can be kind of mean in this one, but everyone's been there where you're the awkward kid going through middle school and you're just trying to figure out who you are as a person. That's what this book does perfectly and makes it one of my favorites because of that. I'm probably going to repeat myself a lot from the past rankings, but I've done so many, so please give me a break. If this book wasn't as good as it is, none of the other ones would even exist. I'm putting it in the Zooey Mama tier, but it's okay at the end of the day. Now we have the second book, Rodrick Rules. This one has always been one of my favorites ever since I first read it. Rodrick is my favorite character, so when you have a book all about him, I'm basically gonna like it right off the bat. If the first one was relatable because of school, this one's relatable because of the family. However, if I did have one complaint, I do wish Jeff Kenny went into a little bit more of detail with Rodrick as a character. He is kind of just there and the mean older brother, and that's it. We don't really learn a lot about him, and I wish we did. But that really is a minor thing compared to everything else in this book, and with all that, I have to put it in the Zooey Mama tier. Trust me, they're not all gonna be there, but these first two just deserve it. However, I do think this one is better than the original Wimpy Kid book. So as of right now, it's going at the top of the tier, but it's okay at the end of the day. Now we have the third book, The Last Straw, and I always felt this one was kind of forgettable. When people are thinking of the classic Wimpy Kid books, it's usually the original Dog Days or even Cabin Fever. However, one idea I've always loved from this book is that we get to see more of the dad. Every other book pushes him to the side. You never see him. This is the only book where he kind of gets the spotlight throughout. That has always been one of my favorite topics in this book. However, everything else when it's not Greg with his dad is kind of just forgettable and nothing too different from what we have seen before. I'm going to be putting it in the A tier, but it's okay at the end of the day. Number 4 is Dog Days. If you have seen any of my other videos, you would know where this one goes. As much as I love Rodrick Rules, Dog Days will always have a special place in my heart. This is the first Wimpy Kid book I ever read. I hated reading, but somehow I read through this entire book and I knew I had to get the rest of the series. I like the different environment from the first 3, where it's mostly him at his house or school. This one we take Greg in a new place and crazy stuff happens, I guess. But this will always remain my favorite Wimpy Kid book, mostly based on the nostalgia alone, but the book itself is pretty good. It's going at the top of Zooey Mama, but it's okay at the end of the day. Number 5 is a very interesting one. It's The Ugly Truth. Every single year, this book goes higher on my list because it honestly just gets better with age. And not really in a sense that it's complicated to read, but just the themes that it's trying to explore. This book, we deal with Greg getting older, what friends he wants to be with, and all that stuff. I really like that topic a lot, but sadly, it doesn't dive into that as much as I would have liked it to. The idea is there of him growing up, but you can tell Jeff Kenny didn't want to go too much into that because he clearly had more books to write where Greg is still in middle school. It's going in the Zooey Mama tier in front of the original book. Also, what's kind of funny about this book, if you didn't know, the original title was going to be Rowley's Revenge. That would have been a very interesting title and definitely would have stood out from the rest, but it's okay at the end of the day. Now we got the 6th book, Cabin Fever. This is probably one of the most known Wimpy Kid books out there. I feel like random people that don't even know Wimpy Kid remember this book somehow, but it is for good reason because the book is just good. You got Greg and his family trapped inside on a cold, snowy day. The dad's not there, of course, because I guess these books just hate the dad, but it is a pretty unique idea. With them being trapped inside because of the snow, it gives us an excuse to look at more of the family dynamic. This was always one of my favorites when I was younger, so you really can't blame me too much when I put this in the Zooey Mama tier. I would only put it above the original. I think the other 3 are a little bit better, but it's okay at the end of the day. Now we got number 7. This book is pretty old in the series. It's the 7th one to be made and came out the same year as the Dog Days film did, but I really don't enjoy this book at all. Don't get me wrong, I think there is some elements that are pretty good, but overall it's a really dull book that feels very out of place to me, at least, where Greg is trying to get a girlfriend the entire time, and at the end, Rowley ends up getting one, and it sets up the next book. This almost feels like a prequel to The Hard Luck. Unfortunately, this book has to go in the cheese touch tier, but it's okay at the end of the day. Now, if that one was one of the worst, the next one, Hard Luck, is surprisingly not bad at all. This is another one like The Ugly Truth, where it goes up higher every year. I like the random inclusion of the Magic 8 Ball. I think it just adds something different to the series, where Greg will ask it questions to see what answer he gets, while still trying to make new friends because Rowley has a girlfriend, and he's a little bit of a simp. I feel like Jeff Kenny had a lot of fun writing this one, mostly with the Magic 8 Ball idea. So with all that, I'm gonna put it in the A tier, but not above The Last Straw. Also, every year I usually ask the Magic 8 Ball a question, but I don't even have one this time, so I'm gonna have to do it online. My question is, will I ever stop making these ranking videos? What's it gonna say? Very doubtful. Well, I guess it's not wrong, but it's okay at the end of the day. Now we got an infamous one. Book number 9, The Long Haul. The book. I'm talking about the book, not the movie. Why would I be talking about that? It's obviously the book. Of course, we all know about the Long Haul movie and how disappointing it was. But that couldn't be any more opposite from the book because I really like this one a lot. The whole idea of going on a road trip really appeals to me because I just love road trips. So a book like this is pretty fun to read. I'm actually pretty surprised it took 9 books to do that idea, especially when you look at how many copied this one later on. But at the time, this was pretty unique and the road trip itself is pretty funny. So it's going in the A tier above Hard Luck. Man, do I wish this got a good movie though. But it's okay at the end of the day. At number 10, we have Old School. This is the most underrated book in the entire series. The whole theme of Greg getting outside with different people with no technology is pretty enjoyable to read. It's got a focused plot and the plot is pretty good overall, so I have to put it in the A tier above The Long Haul. But it's okay at the end of the day. Now, if you're a Wimpy Kid fan or if you've seen my videos, you'll know the next book that's coming up. That would be book number 11, Double Down. Ever since I read it, I wasn't the biggest fan of it. I think the biggest downfall of this book is the plot. I know Wimpy Kid books don't really have the most focused plots, but man, does this one mess it up. On the back, it talks about how they're gonna make their own movie, which I think is a very unique idea. I would have loved to see Greg and Rowley try to make a film, really going all in at it, but instead, we only get that idea in the last 30 pages or so, and the rest of it is filled with, well, filler. What makes this book so low on the list for me is the potential that it had but didn't do. I'm putting it at the bottom of the cheese touch tier, but it's okay at the end of the day. Now we got book number 12, The Getaway, also known as The Long Haul Part 2. That's right, it's another vacation book, but this time they're not in the car, it's on an airplane, so it's a little bit different. That's my biggest complaint right there. It's very similar to The Long Haul, except they go to a different vacation spot. I will admit it has some funny ideas, and I'll even give it credit for being pretty focused on that idea of the vacation, but sadly it just kind of gets boring. Not my least favorite of all time, but feels a little repetitive, and I have to put it in the cheese touch tier, but I'll put it at the top of the list. But it's okay at the end of the day. Now we got book 13, which is The Meltdown. This book always reminds me of Cabin Fever because a lot of it has to deal with the snow, especially with the ending that everyone talks about, where it's a big snowball fight in the neighborhood. I think that's definitely the best part of the book, and it's got some good moments leading up to it. I think it does a good job of having the big ending, but the rest of the book builds up to it. Other books in this series have the good ending, but a lot of it's just filler leading up to it. So I won't put it in the cheese touch, but it's gotta go in B tier. I think I'm gonna have an epic meltdown if I keep doing these videos. I love doing that same joke every year. I feel like I'm gonna have a meltdown if I keep going. But it's okay at the end of the day. Now we got book 14, The Wrecking Ball. Yeah, honestly, I'm not a big fan. Wrecking Ball, not bad. I think the idea is interesting, where the Heffley family has to deal with remodeling their house and all of that stuff. But for some reason, it's so over the top that it just takes you completely out of it. Which I guess it's funny to read, but I've always been more of a fan of the realistic Wimpy Kid books. So unfortunately, I have to put it in the cheese touch tier. But it goes above The Third Wheel and Double Down. But it's okay at the end of the day. Now we got book 15, The Deep End. This time they're on another road trip, but they take an RV. I don't see this book adding much to the series. I love the road trip ideas, but there definitely is ways to switch it up and not just make it them driving and arriving and then they do stuff. It's going in the cheese touch tier below Wrecking Ball. But hey, at least it's signed by Jeff Kenny. That's an accomplishment, right? But it's okay at the end of the day. Book 16 is Big Shot. This is probably the most focused plot out of any of the Wimpy Kid books. Almost all of it relates to Greg trying to join the basketball team. It's a very classic underdog story like Rocky, so I'll put it at the B tier above the Meltdown. But it's okay at the end of the day. Now we got one that surprised many fans, book number 17, Diaper Overload. This book is mostly focused on Greg's brother Rodrick, and there hasn't been a book like that since Rodrick Rules. I was very excited when I first heard about this because I wanted to see what Jeff Kinney would do with the Rodrick character. Unfortunately, there isn't much done because it's just the same old Rodrick and we learn nothing new about him. But it takes this series into a new direction where it's mostly focused on Rodrick and Greg is barely in it. And although, like I said, the book doesn't go much into detail about Rodrick, it's still fun to see him hanging out with the band and Greg going along for the ride. It's going at the back of A tier, but it's okay at the end of the day. Now we're getting into the most recent ones with book 18, No Brainer. It's actually a couple books where you don't even see Greg in school. So I like how it tries to bring Greg back to school, but as for the same problem I have with Wrecking Ball, it's a little bit too over the top. I'm probably gonna forget this in a couple years time because it's just there to me. But I can't put it in the cheese touch tier because I do like Greg back in school. But it's okay at the end of the day. And now we have the newest book from Wimpy Kid, and that is book 19, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Hot Mess. Basically, it's another road trip type book, but this time they go on a boat. So for that alone, you might think it's one of my least favorites, but I actually kind of like it. They switch it up a little bit this time, where it's the entire extended family going on the trip as well, and not just the main family. You got the whole plot of the grandma's meatballs, and it has a pretty good twist ending. I can't give it any higher than a B tier. However, I think it's better than No Brainer. But it's okay at the end of the day. So that was the main Wimpy Kid books, but we still have 3 more with the Raleigh Jefferson books. Don't think I forgot about these. First up, we have Diary of an Awesome Friendly Kid. When I first read this, I was going into it trying to make fun of it, but I honestly kind of liked it. We get to see Greg from Raleigh's perspective, and it really shines a light on how mean Greg can be. So I'm gonna put it in B tier above No Brainer, but it's okay at the end of the day. Unfortunately, I can't say the same about the next one in the series, Raleigh Jefferson's Awesome Friendly Adventure. It felt like another road trip, but it switched up a little bit because it takes place in ancient times. The biggest problem I have with it though is I don't really care about the characters. The whole fantasy aspect doesn't really work to me, and I think the joke where Greg just constantly wants money gets a little repetitive, so it's gotta go in the cheese touch tier. The only book that I would say is worse than it is Double Down, but it's okay at the end of the day. However, there's still one more, and that's Raleigh Jefferson's Awesome Friendly Spooky Stories. This one takes the idea of all the random stories and completely runs with it. I mean, I'm a big fan of horror stuff in general, so I guess I give it bonus points for that. I think the stories are interesting. I find them funny. I'm gonna put it in the B tier above No Brainer, but it's okay at the end of the day.
That's it for the 2024 ranking, but there's still one more thing to say.
Happy New Year, everyone! Wow, that definitely wasn't worth it.
I am now selling merch. Click the link in the description to get yours today.
But overall, it's alright. But it's alright overall.
But at the end of the day, it's okay. But it's okay at the end of the day.